What do you do when you see two snails fighting? Nothing. Let them slug it out. Out of all the most toxic things a player can do in Identity V, from emoting whilst kiting, spraying constantly as a survivor drops a pallet on your head, a hunter hitting the air above your downed body repetitively, none of these are as controversial as slugging. For those unfamiliar with the word, it does not include throwing slugs at a player. Neither does it include throwing the hardest punch you can. What does a slug do? Well, it slides across the floor on its belly, or in the case of a survivor, crawls across the floor bleeding out. Slugging is the action of being left on the floor by the hunter. The hunter decides to leave you on the ground instead of picking you up and taking you to the chair. As I mentioned before, a lot of people get angry when a hunter does this. They consider it to be toxic and unfair. What do you think? Slugging, despite the general consensus, is actually a strategy.
That is rich coming from a hunter main. Of course you would agree with slugging. Slugging is the most uninteractive part of Identity V.
Is that really true? When does a hunter want to slug you? That is a good question. Most often this happens when there are a couple of cipher machines remaining and the hunter is aware that if he takes the slug survivor to a chair and camps until someone comes to rescue, then the last cipher machine will be primed. To prevent this from happening, this hunter leaves the survivor on the ground and heads straight into another chase, technically leaving two survivors unable to decode, as one is incapacitated on the floor and the other one is being chased. This of course wastes less time for the hunter and gives them a chance to turn the tides and squeeze a little bit more out of the match before that last cipher machine gets completed. This is a huge risk though, as leaving that survivor on the ground and leaving them there risks them using exit path to get themselves up, or a teammate popping the last cipher machine, picking them up anyway. That survivor now got themselves a free rescue without needing anyone to come and rescue them in the first place. There are more risks of course, but this is the main reason why you don't see slugging too often, especially since most people carry borrowed time and exit path, the two Persona Web traits that are complete counters to the first time slugging strategy. Oh, I said it. First time. What happens if you use your exit path, or borrowed time was already used? Now the hunter can slug you until you bleed out. That is toxic. Or is it? Bleeding out takes 4 minutes in Identity V, if I've done my research correctly of course. That is 4 times as long as a full chair takes. Oh, and there's no halfway mark either. So if you get knocked down again after getting bled out a little bit, you will just continue ticking from where you left off the last time. This gives tons of time for a teammate to come and pick you up, for you to crawl to a hiding spot, or for you just to heal up to the maximum limit. Now, why is being slugged actually better for you as a survivor than being chaired? Being knocked down and slugged is beneficial as your teammates, similar to rescuing from a chair, can come and pick you up but without any serious consequence to your status in the game. If a hunter picks you up and carries you to a chair, now when you get rescued, you can only be rescued one more time before you get eliminated, assuming that they rescued you before half of course. Meanwhile, if someone picks you up off the ground, you can get knocked down tens of times and you will never get any serious consequences to your security in the match. No chairs and no numbers of downs before you get sent back to the manor. Did I mention that compared to a chair you can also move around? Yes, if you don't want to be rescued from a certain area or want to be rescued closer to a pallet or a window, so if the hunter does come to you when you get up, you can now just get away. Well, you can do that. In the case of a chair, you can only sit and watch as your teammates try to approach that highly guarded chair location that the hunter has chosen for you. But when you are slugged, you can effectively go to the best possible pickup location for essentially getting rescued. Some would argue that
if nobody can come and pick you up, then what will you do then?
My argument remains the same. If nobody comes to rescue on a chair, then you are eliminated. There is nothing you can do. But when slugged, you can crawl to an exit gate, or even to a dungeon if you try hard enough. There is a much higher chance that you will get out when you're slugged. It also pressures the hunter into eventually having to deal with you, as you are able to escape when they least expect it. They must also keep tabs on you as you crawl towards your teammates for a heal. They need to know where you are at every single time, or at least be aware of your general location so they don't waste time trying to find you when trying to pick you up and put you on the chair. So with all these issues with a hunter slugging you, then why do hunters do it in the first place? Why take such a big risk? Well, apart from the example I previously mentioned at the beginning of this video, there are other niche scenarios that can occur where slugging survivors just helps you keep up a faster paced match as a hunter, giving you more downs, less decoding, and more stability in the match. In many cases, there are hunters that have whole abilities centered around slugging, such as Undead for example, whose main weakness is the fact that he slugs, as many people can essentially self-rescue themselves once each match, giving them more time to decode as nobody needs to go in for a rescue. It also takes 3 minutes for a survivor to bleed out against a Percy, so you still have 3 times longer than a rocket chair, even more time to decode of course. Smiley Face is another example of a hunter whose ability promotes him slugging, as one of his attachments for his rockets slow the healing speed of the survivor hit by his rocket. This makes it harder for teammates to rescue them, as often the teammate won't be healed to 95% in time, or with the hunter perk that lowers the healing maximum to 70%. This means that if they've used exit path against a Smiley, then the rescue will have to come and heal up before getting them picked back up again. This gives Smiley Face tons of time, and since he has no cipher pressure or anti-decoding abilities, it gives him time to do the only thing he does best: chase. But now we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Slugging can be toxic when used in a toxic way. Wow, Phoenix, nice logic there. I'm serious though. Although I am arguing that slugging is a valid and fair strategy that is actually better for the survivor overall than being put on a rocket chair, there are people who use slugging to waste people's time. Slugging, as mentioned before, takes 4 minutes before you're sent back to the manor, and a toxic hunter or one hunter that's just had enough of you could use this as a sort of punishment or way to show some type of dominance as they waste 4 minutes of your time. They purposefully camp your body or slug the whole team and refuse to pick anyone up to end the match faster. That is when slugging gets toxic. Please don't confuse the mechanic of slugging for a win with the intentions of a salty hunter that will find any way to waste your time, especially since there are double standards for survivors where they argue that slugging for the win is toxic, but they themselves will do almost anything they can to get a 4-person escape. Why shouldn't the hunter use all their tools to try and secure 4K as well, even in quick match that is of course both designed for fun and also for practice? What do you think about it? Still unconvinced? Tell me down in the comments below, and please keep it civil. If you are still curious about the balance of Identity 5, then you should watch this video here, where I talk about Identity 5's biggest underlying issue that has led to a flurry of other issues in the game.